Hello and welcome back to Chased by Grace. My name is Lee Robinson. I am your host. I'd like to start out this evening reading from 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse number 6 and 7. It says this, "For God who commanded the light to shine out of darkness hath shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels," or the more common language would be jars of clay, "that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us." What these verses are telling us is that the same God who spoke the world into existence, if you go back to the book of Genesis chapter 1, God just spoke and everything that exists came into existence by the power of his word. Well, the Bible teaches us that that same God, with the same word, spoke into our hearts, those who believe in Jesus Christ. And the Bible teaches us that he created us a new creation, made us a new creation, that same light. Before there was darkness in us and blindness and a deadness spiritually. But when we turned to Jesus, there was a new life, new creation that was born inside of us. And it all came through Jesus Christ, the one who died for our sins, was buried, and rose from the dead. And in this scripture, he also says here, Paul, the apostle who wrote this, that we have this treasure in earthen vessels. In other words, when God decided to show off, when he decided to make a statement about who he is, he didn't, show up in, like we would think, in a big ball of glory, just blinding everybody. And he has done that, but he doesn't usually do that. He's chosen a more special way to show his glory in human beings, fallen, broken, sinful, weak human beings of flesh. And he did it this way so that we wouldn't get the glory, but that he would get the glory and that he would show us something so special. He's not just majestic and powerful and a blinding light, but he's a God of compassion, a God of humility, of grace and mercy and love. He's a God that wants to come to us and to make himself known to us and even come to live inside of us in these dirty places. When Jesus was born, he was born in a dirty stall with, rejected people and just unknown. And he's showing, I want to be with you. I want to identify with you. I want to be born here in that dirty place where he was born. And the greater thought is that he wants to do that with us. He wants to do that with you, with each one of us, the God of heaven, of eternity, of glory. He wants to live in you. He wants you to be his son or his daughter, and for him to be your father. And so thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in whenever you are. Our heartbeat here is that you would see the glory of God, that you would taste his glory, his love, that you would know him with experientially know him, not just know about God, that you would walk with God, and that you would come to taste the same things that we have of his goodness. So thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight we have a special guest with us. Chris KURAK is with us. Thank you so much, brother, for being here. We just actually met not too long ago.
We actually met evening Sunday service at a random church too.
Yes. So this is the second time we've seen each other in person.
Yes, it is.
I heard a little bit of Chris's story, and I thought to myself, I need to have him come on. And so thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the hour-plus drive it took to
brother,
get here.
I am gladdened to be here. All right, and drive an hour to share my testimony for God's glory.
Awesome. So looking forward to your story.
Yes.
Let's jump in and let's start talking about where you're from. So where are you from?
Okay, so that's a hilarious one to ask. So I originally grew up in Vernon, Connecticut. I've always been in Connecticut my entire life, where the show was hosted, but more up north. And I grew up there originally, and then I eventually moved out to Coventry, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And then now I live out in Eastford, Connecticut.
Okay.
So that's a more recent update, though.
Right. Okay. So growing up, what was your religious life like? You're 20. We were just talking. You're 21.
I'm
now.
21. I'm a young buck here.
So your childhoods, from young to like high school,
So I'm going to start off with more familial background, because that plays a huge, intricate role in how I grew up and where I grew up and the environment I grew up in, more than what my youthful years were like. So I am a first-gen American immigrant kid, all right, first-gen American. And my dad met my mother in Belarus, in Minsk. And my mother is his second wife. The first wife didn't work out, and he had one kid out of that marriage, which is my half-sister, which will play a very important role later on in the story, in the divine providence integral moment of everything going on and how I got to know Christ and how he revealed himself to me. So I grew up with 2 immigrant parents, but I didn't have any real family in the States at all. All my family lived in Belarus and Minsk. So I didn't grow up in the normal sense of some immigrant families I've met, where it's like they have all the family members here and they're all localized, or even like same for even like multi-generation Americans. Nor did I grow up with like an inner circle. I didn't grow up in the church at all either. So with that being said, let me just start like aging things here. So when I was younger, because my family's, not from here, they naturally had to work harder than most families to actually afford a life here, actually work. And that developed my family being workaholics for sure. And when I was born, apparently, I had a special condition where I had inflamed tonsils constantly. So instead of having the ability to breathe normally, I was pretty much allergic to the air at a very young age, when I was 1 until the surgery I had when I was 4. So due to that, I ended up in a very interesting situation at a young age. I had a speech disability. You may be shocked about that because I could talk all the time, but I did have a speech disability at a young age where I had a hard time speaking, and I recall even learning a little bit of Russian first before learning even English. So naturally going to public school and having a speech disability and speaking a little bit of a different language, which I don't speak anymore, anyone watching, right? is it definitely created an interesting scenario where I ended up being in the special education system in my very young years, and that was, I would say, a pivotal moment of a lot of things that would end up happening in my life, which I'll be sharing about. So we get to this, I have this interesting point when I was like 5 or so, and I become special education because of my speech. But what ended up happening was way worse than that. It was, I had a hard time socializing with other kids because I couldn't communicate. So oftentimes as a child, I remember I was blamed for certain things, like, all right, this guy stole this book from somebody. No, it's a guy who can't speak. It's a cripple, all right? And it led very quickly to very early social anxiety, I would argue, but also anger issues at a very young age. And there was also other things going on in the family. Like I had a very traumatic familial incident at a young age too, which I'm not going to specify on. And my mother started to focus on her career. So right when I was getting into school, I kind of became disconnected with my mother due to her focusing on work more than focusing on me, sadly. And that's always played a long-term effect years on afterwards, like it always will. And my father was naturally the breadwinner, so he always was working, and I remember him more in my childhood than even my own mother being around to some degree. But going back to school, because, you know, this is around that age where school is everything.
Yeah.
In elementary, I got placed in the special ed system, and I remember just, you know, getting blamed for a lot of stuff. So I got diagnosed, or whatever you wish to say, and it was like, this kid's an angry kid. He's always angry. He has issues. And a few suggestions were made about even taking prescription drugs at that point. I recall a few conversations. I was like, no, whatever I said back then. And basically what happened in elementary was I got very disconnected of everyone, and I remember my teachers at certain points leaving bruise marks on me, and a lot of, you know, physical things that were traumatizing for a young kid of my age, for sure, because I was pretty much defenseless, helpless, and they always came up with excuses to my father whenever anything was asked, and I pretty much had no one else to talk to or ask for help. And at a very young age, I learned to distrust people, and I definitely formed a hatred at a very young age. Like, I would say at like 6 or 7 years old for people, which is very unusual if you meet, when you meet young kids, like, oh yeah, I love everybody. And then you got 7-year-old me, just, I hate everyone.
Yeah.
So, any questions about that specifically, or nothing there? All right. So, that's like the predecessor to most of the stuff that happened to me as a kid. And there's a few things here and there, certain incidents, but we only have a limited amount of time, so we're not going to talk about everything. So what ended up happening next was in 5th grade. 5th grade was like one of my few good years in elementary. I got out of special education somehow, and there's nothing real traumatic about that at all. My mother and my dad were still workaholics, but I just remember even as a kid, like even younger than that, I was bad. I was worse than most kids. I recall, you know, times I got kicked out of daycares. I think I even got suspended like 5 times in elementary, or even more. Like I had it going on, all right? I had all the trouble, all right? I was trouble. And I think a lot of it was mostly a outcry for attention in my soul at that point. And I didn't grow up in the church either, so I didn't have like this religious background. I didn't have an inner circle of like what people would commonly call a church family. So I didn't really have anyone else to talk to.
I mean, even if you did have a, you know, church background, or, you know, if there's that knowledge in you to, well, if nobody else wants me, God does. Even if you had that, still, as a young child, having both of your parents disconnected, and the situation you're in school and everything, disconnected from everybody else, that's still going to be a rough road to walk down, you know?
Yeah.
But not having, you know, knowledge of God and the church or anything like that as well, you know?
I mean, just as the scriptures say, you know, like when you're blind, you're deaf, your heart's a heart of stone, like you're not going to be receptive to any of that either way. So it was definitely a big part of it, but, you know, not growing up in the church with that background and having this, you know, disconnect with my parents at a young age, and all that stuff going on with just like incidents at school, bad, like certain things I remembered, just the hatred and discomfort of everyone. It's just like, it's one of those situations where there is very limited options for me. Very limited. So 5th grade, going back to elementary for a second, was good. There's nothing I remember bad about 5th grade. It was one of the positive years, but it was like the calm before the storm. So this fifth grade, you're around like what, like 10 or something, if I remember right?
12.
10, 12, whatever. So 10th birthday happens, and then sixth grade comes along, and in the school system I was in, it was 5 elementary schools and then 1 middle school, and they all combined. So naturally, kids being kids, you're going to be looking for that new group of people. That's normal. I look back on it, I'm like, that's normal. But what was a byproduct of that was pretty much, you know, cast aside, had a really good 5th grade, had a lot of friends, I would argue, that were in school, not outside of school, but in school, because everyone knew me as, you know, the kid of the issues. And then 6th grade happens, cast aside, and that's where everything just crumbles. So what ended up happening in 6th grade, I can't even describe fully, but it was a weird moment of like a corridor was just opened, and like any bad memory from like my first like 10 years of existence was just opened up. Like I just realized like how different and how messed up certain things in my life was, and I spiraled out of control very quickly. I was a healthy in 5th grade. I was a normal sized kid, but I remember one of the things I intentionally did when that corridor was opened up, the door was opened, was I would starve myself. I started feeling discomfort in my body. I just despised everything about me, and I would show it, and I even formed a deeper hatred for other people. And it was bad. I mean, like in 6th grade, I remember I like lost 30 pounds. And at that point of time, I was prescribed a prescription drug. Or no, that's a year after. But point I'm trying to get at is things were starting to build up where I started noticing how bad certain parts of my life was. And I had a realization, it was shown to me. And it just, how do you handle that as a young boy? You simply don't. There's no way for a young boy to handle that without any help. Like, my parents at a certain point tried therapists. None of them worked. Nothing worked at that point. Like, I had like 3 or 4 therapists, and they never did anything for me. 3 of them were for me as an individual, and then one of them was a familial counseling therapist, which I would argue helped with my relationship with my father before I was saved, but nothing that is rememberable for sure. So lose all these friends, start getting depressed, start doing stuff potentially like not showering, not eating, not going outside, not talking to anyone, very close, shut doors, wouldn't communicate. At that point of time, my parents started noticing something was wrong with me. Something was really wrong with me. Something was like, not, okay, this kid's different, but like there's signs of maybe even worse going on. And reminder, we're not believers, so they don't believe in spiritual warfare. They don't believe in, you know, what we believe in as Christians, simply that there is 3 different realms of things. We have our spirit, the spiritual essence, we have the physical, and we have our soul, our mind, and whatever. So for them, it's just the mind and the body, and there's no spiritual. It's just natural revelation. Yes. So they think something's wrong with me, and their solution was they knew about this Christian summer camp, and my half-sister went there when I was just born. She was going there for a few years, and it was like, okay, for them specifically, it's like, all right, maybe this kid can make some friends, maybe he can get to know people, maybe maybe this is a solution. And not in the solution in the sense like us as Christians would think, where it's like, okay, he gets to know about this. No, more solution like, okay, maybe he'll get to know X, Y, and Z and make friends and be, glad that he knows people.
Right.
But in reality, I went there and I was described as one thing: possessed by a demon. All right? So there's stories I was told I have no recollection of since, being saved, of me doing insane things, like not even just running away, but like trying to run to the road to get hit by a semi truck, apparently.
Okay, so everyone was serious about that.
Everyone was serious about it. Like I intentionally had behaviors that were, one, definitely an outcry for attention, underlying outcry for attention. Like I needed someone to acknowledge the pain I was in, and I never got that.
Oh.
And acknowledge and help me, but that's not what happened. And what else is there? Just, possessed by a demon, and I would just do stuff that was just completely wild. But that's like the most wildest story I was told about. I did, and I'm like, I was 12 I was 12 at that time, and I don't remember any of it. But that kind of gives.
Were you possessed by a demon?
I'm slightly convinced I was. All right.
Yeah.
But you kind of get built up here, starting to get an idea of the picture of what happened in my life. So the next thing that happened was I go there, nothing happens. The first time I ever heard the gospel, it was 2 weeks of it, and honestly, it was that part of scripture, as I mentioned before, our eyes are blinded, our ears are deaf, our hearts are stone. We have no acknowledgement, no awareness of the good news placed in front of us. There's none of that. And it was a true moment, looking back on it, like I had 2 weeks of hearing the gospel and I don't remember a single thing told to me besides Moses crossing the Red Sea. That's all I remember. So then, at that point in time, we moved to the town I grew up in my teen years, and it was a big switch for me because, yes, I had nobody, but it was like a completely new environment and all of these factors at play. And the biggest thing for me was I wanted to be known. I wanted the attention. I had my desperate cries for, people to see me and acknowledge what was going on with me, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
So even at that point in time, my parents start noticing something was wrong, as I mentioned, and they really start noticing it even more. And the solution ended up being, okay, let's make him take, prescription pills. That was a solution. That a therapist recommended that, and in the world we live in, sadly, that's kind of where people lean to.
Yeah.
It's always going to be, okay, let's take a pill to solve the problem, and not so much let's figure out what the problem is and then address it properly.
Yeah.
So I moved to this town and complete havoc, all right? Like, in the first year, I got kicked off of the school bus, wasn't allowed back on the school bus. I got expelled. I got, way crazier stuff I'm not even going to mention on TV. But let's just say, I caused havoc, all right? I caused complete havoc, and by the time it was December, they were just like, all right, he's going to in-school suspension, and no one's going to talk to him at all. And that was one of the darkest seasons of my life, I would argue, in a 6-7 month span. So let me just take a drink of water here.
Yeah.
So with that being said, in that scenario in 7th grade, when I was about 12 turning 13, it was the darkest season of my life. And the reason why I say that is I was introduced to, again, this prescription drug, and I then got in-school suspension, which is like normal suspension, but you're in the school. And it was originally meant to be 1 month. It turned into the entire school year. So I moved to a different town, knew nobody, was considered chaos, caused havoc. I'm not even going to specify on TV. And then I get isolated completely. So I cut off my parents with any inner emotional thing, and immediately I started overdosing on that prescription drug. And at this time, I was about 80 pounds, 90 pounds, whatever you wish to say.
Yeah.
Does not take much at all. And there's, certain points in that period of time I don't remember at all, because I was just doing whatever I could just to escape the pain. I was just discomforted, and I just despised everything, even myself. And I was about 13 at the time, and naturally what happened was I started forming suicidal thoughts. I was like, okay, what's the point of living? Those thoughts started happening, I would argue, at 10, but they really started taking hold when I was 13. And I was like, what's the point of actually being here anymore? Which is wild to think about. That's what I was thinking about at that young of an age. Most kids at that age are not thinking about what's the point of living.
Right.
But I was, sadly, and there was a lot of dark things that happened in that point of time. A lot of memories I really just end up recalling. A lot of wild dreams of, just either from the drugs or some message given to me or something, I don't know. And I made about a total of 3 attempts on my life within 6 months. First 2 I backed out on. Clearly I backed out on the third one if I'm here. But the third attempt was the main one that I will remember. So, third attempt, all right. I was about to do it, not going to specify in what manner, and I was off the pills, the prescription pills. I would just shove them down secretly and let no one know. And I was really good at hiding it, apparently, I learned later on. And I was about to do it, and I just heard a voice, and it was just, wait! And it was like, not audible voice, it was just like a voice in my head where we all understand this feeling. Like we have this like mental conscience in our minds where we hear a voice and we're like, that's our own voice and that's who we are. And like even like theologically speaking here, I'm not a continuationist per se, I'm more of a cessationalist. So like that's a little odd for me to say, but I would say I generally do believe that was the Lord providing me a way out. And after that, through whatever means he ordained, he pretty much made me come to the conclusion of maybe I should go back to that summer camp.
Wow.
I didn't know why. I had no desire to go back. I had no plans of going back. This is about 2 weeks ahead of time. Before camp was about to start, about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Or a week and a half actually. And I was just at my wit's end. At 13 years old and 5 months, I didn't want to live, and I had a heavy desire just to die. Just experience death and be done with it. I didn't know what was on the other side. I didn't know what I believed in. I was in a weird state of like, I believe there's a God, but like not agnostic sense of like I believe in there's a God, but maybe more in a deistic sense of things, maybe theistic in a way. I'm not sure. I couldn't pinpoint it now. But I knew there was a God to some degree, but I didn't know what. So told my parents, hey, I want to go back. They thought that was unusual. And I said to myself, if I didn't find a reason to live in 3 weeks from now, I was going to kill myself. That was my final straw. I was like, I'm at my end here. I have no desire to live. I had nothing to live for, and I was truly at the lowest of my lows. I knew nobody. I had nobody. I enclosed myself in a box, and it was painful. It was really painful and really discomforting for most of my life. And of course, there's so many things I can talk about, but we're 30 minutes in. So we get into this next part of the chapter of, how the Lord saved me by his grace. So I go back to summer camp, and the first 5 days are the same for me. Possessed by a demon, can't see, can't hear, heart of stone. Nothing else there, no desire to hear the gospel, no anything. Wasn't even aware of it. Was like, okay, during summer camp, what they would do is they would do a morning Bible class, morning service for like 30 minutes, which is just worship songs. The Bible class is where most of the meat was. Then there would be a evening service after dinner, which was a more normal church service for like an hour and a half, 2 hours or more. And then there would be a devotional time before going lights out. So there's about 4 chances for the gospel to be hit on a kid and them to hear it and accept it and have faith in it. So all single attempts of that at that point, none of it worked. Again, didn't grow up in the church, so I heard the gospel nowhere else. And what ended up happening was, it was Thursday on July 5th of 2018, specifically around 7 p.m. All right. When at 7 p.m., I can't tell you, but I know it's at 7 p.m. So the Thursday happens, and I call that my true birthday sometimes. I'm like, that's the day that
Started to live.
That's the day where I was alive. And that's the day that the old man was buried. So day goes as normally, for me at least, causing chaos, havoc, you name it, all right? I did it. And I'm not joking for whoever is viewing this. I mean it, all right? So day goes by completely normally, for me at least. Just as I said, everything just not open. And I get there during the evening service, and the camp director, who's like, the main minister preaching the sermon and teaching the kids for evening service, had a message, and there was, I didn't hear any of it, wasn't even aware of it at all. And then at the very end, there was an altar call. And that's a very, unique subject for a lot of people, for sure. But it's not really about the altar call. It's by the means that happened in the altar call. So I'm there, sitting down, and some of my fellow camper teen boys I was with stood up and went up on, the stage and prayed and, normal altar call activities right there. Well, I wasn't normal. Who knew? I see this girl counselor with a box of tissues. I wish we had a box of tissues here. But a box of tissues, all right? Let's make this unique. Here's a box of tissues, brother, all right? So I stood up, all right? And I walked up to her, and everyone's like, what is he about to do? And I just
Right.
grabbed the tissues as gently as possible. And you may think that's not weird at all, but reminder, I was
Who you were, yeah.
chaos, havoc,
The demon-possessed guy.
demon-possessed kid, all in one, who had a bunch of issues and was probably drugged out of his mind at certain points, all right? Not Campo. I was blessed of that. I think that was a big factor in some degrees. So I grabbed it, and when I stood up right beforehand, it was insanity. It was like positive insanity, but it was insanity. It was my heart of stone was turning a heart of flesh that loved and adored God. Was aware of, his comfort, felt loved in the first time ever. Was like, this is just something I've never felt before. It was a love that, what's the right word here? It was a love that just, outranked anything else to every degree. And it was simply by his grace, unmerited favor, more than I deserved.
Yeah.
And that was the moment I would argue that I got saved, was right before the box of tissues when I stood up. And
You just stood up.
I just stood up. I didn't even have any repentance.
You weren't like responding to the altar call.
No,
You just stood up. Yeah,
no,
okay.
no. I wasn't even responding to the altar call. Altar call had no effect on me, brother. All right, literally did nothing. It was just happened to be at an altar call.
Yeah.
And that happened, of course, because Providence here. But I stood up, and it was the first time I ever felt loved. It was the first time I ever felt comforted. It was the moment I realized that the old me was dead. He was no more alive, and the new me was born through Christ. I mean, we read about that in the Gospel of John, how, the believer is reborn within the soul and the spirit and all that. And it's like that verse specifically sometimes sticks out to me, where it's like, I truly felt that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just instant for me. For some people, it's, a gradual change in their life. For some people, it's like me, in a blink of an eye, a flick of, the finger, and it was just instant. My heart was changed. There was no more hatred, no, like, spiritual hatred. There is like a desire to change, to live for Christ. After not at all hearing the gospel, not like being blinded, everything like just preventing me from actually wanting to know it and understand it. And when people tell me testimonies similar, I'm like, I understand how that feels, because it's once you experience, if you ever experience that, to the viewer listening or even yourself, Lee, you understand how powerful God is. That something like that can happen to someone who nobody could help. Parents couldn't help me, the school system couldn't help me, drugs couldn't help me, therapists couldn't help me, doctors couldn't help me. Nobody could help me. But who could? Jesus Christ could help me.
Amen.
So he is my salvation, and I learned that in that moment. So the old me is buried. I stand up, as I told you, that all happened during that moment of standing up. I walk over there, and I grab this box of tissue, and this, who was demon possessed, who had a heart of stone, cared for nobody, hated everybody, would do nothing for anyone, starts handing out these boxes of tissues to every single person I saw crying. Now, if you as the viewer watching, or even you, Lee, put yourself in that perspective of like, you witnessed this person that was just completely,
that's awesome.
like, you had no hope, basically. Like, there's real, like, if you're going to be logically concluding and you had no faith in, God's sovereignty and God's control, then you'd probably have no hope for this person at all. But they witnessed it, and it was a change instantly. Then the director of the camp, who has had many talks with me before that, was like, come here. And I was glad to, which was unusual, of course.
Right.
And he asked me, is Jesus your Savior? And I'm like, yes, he is. Yes, he is. And he has saved me. And that was somewhat of, what I recall saying to him. I was aware it wasn't by my own works, my own doing, that I came to salvation, but it was by his grace, his love. I mean, one of my favorite words, as we all know in the Greek, for most of us in the Bible, in the New Testament, for people who aren't familiar, the New Testament was written in Koine Greek, and the most used word for love in the New Testament is agape, which is unconditional, sacrificial. Forgetting the third one. Well, point is it's sacrificial and unconditional, and there's one other I'm completely brain farting on right now.
Love.
But love.
Love.
All right. And, that sacrificial and unconditional love is exactly who Jesus is.
Yeah.
I didn't earn it. He loved me first. Which is just such a thing to think about, and it can change the soul. With everyone you talk to, it's always you have to, perform an action for them first. You have to love them first. Everything is, weighed on a scale. Like, say, even a gift from a friend. Well, the price of that gift was friendship. Everything has a price. But Jesus' price is just faith. And that's a beautiful thing. As he says, even a little mustard seed can grow. But, so he says, come here. And I tell him that interaction. And the next thing that happened was he told me, I was praying for you for an entire year straight. So within this 5-minute, 10-minute span of time, just looking back on it of my personal testimony and how he saved me, you have all these events leading up to this moment from before I was even born. Then you get into this guy who is a director who is praying for me for an entire year. Then he witnesses my conversion. And then you see this prayer fulfilled in front of your own eyes.
Yeah.
Anyone who says there is not a God above all, controlling all little things, needs to reevaluate life sometimes, right? Because I evaluated that moment so many times in my head, and it's like, it just makes me have so much hope and faith knowing that he's in control.
Yeah.
So that was answered for him, and next things that happened was I get into the situation of, okay, now I have this new life in Christ. I'm born again. The desires of the old are, I'm not suicidal anymore in the sense of, I want to die. I had no purpose. It's I have a purpose now. It's to be a servant for Jesus. It's to live for Jesus. And all the people around me, they're confused in a way because it's they saw this chaos to what happened.
Yeah. Maniac of Gadara.
Yeah. And then even when my parents picked me up, I think that was a powerful moment of, witnessing to them. Even if I knew nothing, it was he was like that, and then he just completely changed. The first thing.
I'm sure they noticed something different.
They noticed something different.
Yeah.
They definitely did in that moment. I think out of every moment throughout the 8 years, I think that was the biggest one. Which is powerful to say because, someone who even knows nothing can make a big impact on someone's knowledge of God.
Yeah.
Which is, encouragement for a lot of people, probably. You don't need to know everything to make an impact on how good God is. So that completely changed. Just skim coding here. So First year of being a Christian, heart changed, focused on God, but I didn't read the Bible. I just ended up going, I asked my dad to bring me to church, and he shockingly said yeah. So I would go bi-weekly when I was 13, and I would like listen to audio Bible and all that. And as a kid, I hated reading. I disliked reading. I had no desire to learn even Russian. My parents wanted me to learn Russian for the longest time. And like English I wasn't good at, and pretty much anything that involved reading I just had struggled with and I didn't want to do. So first year happens, then dealing with being being reborn. Like that first year is always the most craziest because you're like, I have this new life, like what do I do here? And
did you stay in touch with the camp at all?
I did. So actually,
for the guidance or whatever.
Yeah. So actually, funny enough, I forgot to mention this. Thank you for reminding me, Lee. The director who prayed for me got my number, and he would call me every Tuesday. Cool. So I would say that was a huge influence on me, having some guidance while listening to audio Bibles and I think sermons too, if I remember right, and just small things here and there. But that being said, second year comes along, and that's when I first picked up a Bible. So this is a funny story right here. So I go, I had this Bible as a Russian King James Bible. It was half Russian and half 1611 King James. I love the King James, everyone, but it's not it for a 13-year-old boy, all right? Or 14-year-old at this point. And I was like trying to read it on the couch in one of the rooms, and a counselor comes up, and I'm like, how do you read thou? What does this mean? Like this stereotypical like King James 1611 English. And he's like, dude, this has like babushka Russian in it too, which is grandma Russian. I'm like, oh, okay. So he's like, give me a second. So he walks out and he hands me a ESV study Bible, his own, and that was my Bible for several years. It was a gift from me, or not from me, but to me. And that's where a lot of growth happened. And then at the time, after, like, that was the big thing of that year, was the Bible given to me, because that's the main way we actually know God is through his word and not through, our own means. Yes, our own means something. Like my testimony means something. It reminds me of who I am, which is a servant of Christ. I mean, even like the first song I sang during... right after, do you know Christ now moment with the director was, I told you about this Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And it's simply put, amazing grace, unmerited favor, something we did not deserve. And, that was the main moment, yes, but having a Bible that I actually could have read changed a lot for me. So I realized the church I was at the time, it was way too far, and I mean really far, like 45 minutes out, and I wasn't growing there. So I texted one of the people that were living at the campus I got saved at, and I was like, what church you go to? And I ended up going to their church for like 4 years, and it was a particular Baptist church for those 4 years. Or for people who don't know, a Reformed Baptist, a 1689 guy on their doctrine, what they believe in. And I had immense growth there for those years. I think I was there for 3.5 years actually. And there was immense growth. I was there during COVID, which is a wild time in church history for all of us who were Christians.
And
just
before you move more onto that, I'm curious about your your parents and your relationships with people when you came back, when you weren't in camp?
Yeah.
You know, the year or two after.
Yeah, we could
you
talk
got
about
saved.
that.
But we have like 4 minutes left, so so maybe let's try to like close it in on that.
So I would.
I mean, I'm just thinking like there must have been an ongoing curiosity about what happened to you. You know.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So I would say, you know, looking back on it, like my parents right now, I think, are in a questioning stage of a lot of things. Like I recently learned my half sister's diagnosed with cancer, but also has came to the faith. I believe has came to the faith. I'm not really going to say supposedly. Shows good signs of fruit, but I think they're more in I think it was the beginning of their questioning stage, and I think they're still in it to this day. And that's okay. You know, we read about stories in the scriptures where people question for 20, 30 years about God and then get saved 30 years later, just from one key detail.
Yeah.
So I think the first year or two, though, was definitely for them a lot of like what happened. And eventually for them, it was like, oh, this is just a phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is sad to say, but, you know, that's what parents naturally assume of their children.
Right. Right. They've seen it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
that's
with you, it was a little bit different because you had developed such a deep pattern of a certain kind of negative behavior, you know, and then it was just automatically like
Changed.
seemed like different.
Yeah.
And it was consistent, I assume, for the most
it was
part.
very
you know, like,
consistent.
Yeah,
I would say, you know, besides a few like small moments, I'm just going to say it outrightly, stupidity.
Yeah.
It was the heart motivation was completely different.
Yeah.
Before it was all about causing, you know, chaos, attention, havoc, and then afterwards, like my heart attitude was, you know, I live for Christ. I know Christ.
Yeah.
I want to show love like Christ. And of course there's certain, like, you know, looking back and I can say that, but even in the moment, like there's certain struggles I dealt with and certain things in my seasons where it was just like I didn't fully understand certain things. But with my parents specifically, I think my dad had more of an effect with it than my mother, for sure.
Yeah.
Just because he went to, you know, parents therapy with me, and he gave me rides to church, and he definitely had more experience with the more, you know, religious side of that change, and not so much the individual side. Because individual side, people always make excuses about like, oh, he finally came to his senses or something like that. Like, no, I came to my senses, not by me, but for Christ.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, in summary, what happened to my parents, sadly.
Did you get like more connected with people in school or anything like that?
Originally, actually, I would say yes, to some degree when I was a young man. But very quickly on, I think I became more connected with people in the church.
Gotcha. But you did start building a social life.
I did start building a social life. Like I definitely have a social circle, as you can tell. Like I met you out of like nowhere, right? But even like now, like most of my close friends, I would say, are people at my current church where they're with families, kids, and I'm like a church uncle. I would say that's where most of my close friendships have been. But originally a lot of it was more secular friendships, like teenager on teenager friendships. Like, you know, they don't last. They're quick to vanish typically. But
we're out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time here. We're out of time here.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. We're going to have you come back. So
I think so. I think so now.
So we can continue the story, but that was
expect
really powerful. Thank you so much.
I didn't expect it to be an hour. I was like, oh, it's only 15 minutes. No.
Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for everybody who watched for the last hour, whenever you might be tuning in. We'll see you next time. Have a good night.